Hi guys, in this YouTube video, I'm going to show you how to set up the Raspberry Pi and how to SSH into your Pi. So the first thing we need to do is we need to install the Raspberry Pi's operating system into the SD card. So what I recommend is that you download the Raspberry Pi Imager. So you can download it for Windows, for Mac, for Linux, depending on the type of PC that you are using. So downloading the Raspberry Pi Imager, at least for me, it takes a very long time. I think it took me about an hour. I don't quite remember. So just have it installed in the background and then go and get a quick bite to eat, watch a video, whatever. It just takes a pretty long time. So let's open up Raspberry Pi Imager. So the first thing you want to do is you want to choose your operating system. So I usually just use Raspberry Pi OS, and this is what's recommended anyways. And then you want to choose your storage. So this is the micro SD card that I have inserted into my PC. There is an additional step. It is optional, but I recommend that you do take the step. So what I do is on the screen, I press Ctrl-Shift-X. And this pops up. So what I'm doing is I'm just pre-configuring my OS, and this will save me a lot of time when I'm setting up my Pi. So I recommend strongly that you take this additional step. So you just set up these options. So you enable your SSH, give it a password. So SSH basically allows you to connect wirelessly to your Pi without having to have a monitor, plugging it in using an HDMI cable. It just saves you a lot of space. It's much more convenient. Often I just SSH into my Pi. It's just much easier. I want to set up your Wi-Fi, configure your Wi-Fi, just configure these settings to your preferences. Save. And then once you have what you need, just write and flash your SD card. So sometimes it can take a relatively long time, sometimes it takes only 30 minutes, even shorter. It really just depends, so just have some patience. Okay, so right now we're looking at the screen of my Raspberry Pi. So for you, after you finish flashing your SD card and you insert it into your Pi and you connect the necessary peripherals, so you connect the keyboard, you connect the mouse, you also want to connect the HDMI cable, the micro HDMI cable, to your Pi, because for the very first time when you set up your Pi, you have to connect it with the monitor. So what happens now is you want to jot down some important information and extract some important information from your Pi. So for me, I have my Ethernet cable connected to my Pi, and the other end of the Ethernet cable is connected to my D-Link. So it's a Wi-Fi extender, and it just allows me to work in my room. It's much more convenient for me to just put my D-Link, put Wi-Fi extender in my room. I have also tried, so my laptop is a newer version, so I actually have bought it's just like a USB to Ethernet port connector, and I connected my one end of the Ethernet cable to my laptop, and then one end to my Raspberry Pi. I don't know whether it wasn't good quality or for whatever other factor, but it just was extremely slow. It caused the Wi-Fi for my Pi to be extremely slow, so that was really a really big nuisance, especially when I was downloading things on my Pi that required Wi-Fi. So for the Pi, you can connect to the Wi-Fi using the Ethernet cable, but you can also connect it. Once you set up the Wi-Fi, you can connect it without an Ethernet cable. It's just that it's not going to be as strong, so it might be more slow when you're trying to download things that require Wi-Fi. So that's why I like to just connect it with the Ethernet cable, because I like things when they're faster, when they download faster. So the first thing you want to know is you want to jot down your IP address. So you can see down here it says your IP address, and there's also some commands that you can run in the terminal, but really this is the fastest way to know your IP address, and it's really important that you jot this down because you're going to need it when you're trying to SSH into your Pi or you're trying to connect through VNC Viewer. So the next thing you're going to do is you want to go to Preferences, and then you want to write Raspberry Pi configuration. So this Raspberry Pi, I already set it up, so what you might see on the screen might be a bit different from what you see on your own screen, so just follow through. So what happens is you want to press interfaces. So for you probably will have the camera disabled. I think you might have VNC disabled, so just make sure that your camera is enabled, make sure your SSH is enabled, make sure your VNC is enabled, press OK. So this will probably require you to reboot your Pi. Press yes, reboot your Pi. Okay, so now I'm going to show you how to connect to your Pi through VNC Viewer. So when connecting to VNC Viewer, you still want to power your Pi and you still want to connect to the internet through Ethernet cable, because that's how VNC Viewer works. You have to be connected to the same internet. So my PC has to be connected to the same internet that my Pi is connected to, and that is also how you SSH into your Pi, which I will show you later. So I will comment the link below about how to download VNC Viewer, and then after you download VNC Viewer, what you want to do is at the search bar you want to enter the IP address of your Pi that I told you to jot down. You press enter, and for me it directs me to the screen of the Raspberry Pi, but that's because I already connected my Pi through VNC Viewer before. If you connect to your Pi for the first time, however, a screen will pop up and it'll ask you for your username. If you didn't change anything, which usually isn't the case, that your username should be Pi. It should be P-I, all lowercase. And then your password should be the password you set up when you're enabling your SSH, when you were flashing your SD card. So that should be your password. And there will be like a box at the bottom that is, I'm pretty sure it said like save for future use or remember me. Just click that box so that every time you connect your Pi through VNC Viewer, you don't have to type your password, you don't have to type your username. So for me, I like to use VNC Viewer more than just SSH into your Pi, because when you connect through VNC Viewer, you can actually see the screen of your Pi and not just the command terminal. So another thing I always experience after I reflash my SD card is that when I want to connect to VNC Viewer, I usually get the problem, and it's called cannot currently show desktop. And I'll just show you how to fix this problem. It's very simple, fast. It shouldn't really take that long. So the first thing you want to do is you want to enter the Raspberry Pi configuration, so sudo raspberry config. So then you want to go right displays, so just use your arrow keys, press enter, and then resolution, enter, and then usually you want to change your default mode to mode 31, so 1920x1080, and then you press enter, press OK. It will require you to reboot your Raspberry Pi, and that should fix your problem if you ever get an issue that says cannot show desktop when you're trying to connect through VNC Viewer. And you have to do this connected to the monitor first, and then once you change the resolution using your monitor, then you can try again to connect through VNC Viewer, and your screen should show up this time. So the next thing you have to do is you want to SSH into your Pi. So I downloaded an application called Putty, and I will link that below as well. So once again, you want to type in your host name. You want to type in that IP address that I told you to jot down. So let me just type mine in. So the port default will always be 22. Don't change anything. You can also give your session a name. So I'll name it demo, because I'm demoing how it's working, whatever, demo. You don't need to do this, and then you can open. Okay, so once I connect to Putty, it requires me to log in. And login is usually going to be the same thing. It's just going to be P-I. And then it requires the password. And that will be, once again, the password that you already established when you're enabling your SSH and when you're flashing your SD card. So the weird thing, oops, I wrote the wrong password. The weird thing about Putty is that when you're typing the password, it does not show up. It's just a security feature. So for me, the first time I connected through Putty, I spent like 10 minutes trying to figure out why the password was not showing up when I type it in. But just a security feature. So once I connect and type in the right password, it just brings me like a command terminal of the Raspberry Pi. Okay, so the last thing I want to do is I just want to show you how you add or install certain applications onto your Raspberry Pi. And Raspberry Pi, the defaultly comes with the Thonny Python IDE. The one that I prefer is Mu. I have no idea how to pronounce it. So in order to install Mu, what I do is I go to Preferences, and then I go on recommended software. Or if you want a list of all the software possible, you can write add remove software. But I like recommended software. So you have to wait a while for it to load. So what you want to do is you press programming, press this, and then press apply, and then it should download. Another application I want to show is FileZilla. I use it a lot because even though you can code in your Raspberry Pi, I don't really like to do that. I like to code in PyCharm on my laptop, and then I can transfer those files through FileZilla. So you can also email them to yourself. So you can save those files and then email them and then access your email on your Raspberry Pi. It's just, in my opinion, especially when you're transferring files, a large quantity of files, you want to transfer it quickly, FileZilla is your thing to go. So once again, I'll link how to download FileZilla. So the first thing you want to do is you want to enter your hosts. So your host is just going to be your Wi-Fi. Right, that Wi-Fi IP address I was telling you about. So the next thing you want to do is enter your username, which default should be Pi. Then your password, so that is a password you have when you SSH into your Pi, when you connect through VNC Viewer, and the port default will always be 22. Quick connect, and then you see on this screen, this is the files I have on my PC. And on this screen is the files I have on my Raspberry Pi. So if I want to, for example, transfer my schedule to my desktop, from my desktop to my Raspberry Pi, I just drag and drop it, and then it'll transfer it. Very fast, very simple. It's really worth downloading in my opinion.